Welcome to the Painting Insights podcast. We have been working on something in the background.
That's right. We've actually started a Patreon channel. For the last couple of months, we've had previous guests revisit the channel to give us additional content, everything from studio tours, sketchbook tours, talking us through the process of paintings and all kinds of additional treats, which you're exclusively going to see as a patron who supports the channel.
So by supporting us on Patreon, you help the channel keep going. There's a lot of work put into this, from the video editing to the sourcing of guests. So you really help us find those guests and to put the content out.
And we have lots of content planned for the near future. So the links for that will be in the description of this video and in the description on the podcast channels. And otherwise, you can go on to Patreon and type in Painting Insights Podcast and support us that way. Thanks very much. Enjoy the video. Would you mind introducing yourself for the audience, please?
Well, hello. Thank you for having me. I'm Valérie Pirlot. I'm a Belgian painter that lives in UK. I've been in UK for the last 20 years. I think I'm self-taught, and I think people describe my work, I suppose, colorful. It's all about the light. Some say impressionist, some say expressionist. I paint mainly from life and mainly a la prima in small session and quite quickly with kind of lively brush strokes. And what else to say? I live in Bath with my husband and 2 children. And I'm a member of the RY, so Royal Oil Institute, Royal Institute of Oil Painter, and also from the Bath Society of Artists. And I think that's all there is to say as an introduction.
Lovely. Well, if I understand correctly, it was last year you were introduced as a full member of the Royal Institute of Oil Painters. Is that correct?
Yeah, so just like a month ago in December.
Congratulations. That's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
And well deserved as well. It's beautiful work that you make. It's lovely.
Thank you.
So what made you move to the UK from Belgium?
Oh, well, I came to Bath as a tourist 20 years ago, and that night in the pub, I met my husband. So that's what, but I remember it was after, because in Belgium, I studied communication and I was kind of ready to start a life in Belgium. I wasn't, I suppose I've been painting and drawing since I was 12, but more as a hobby, and I wasn't taking that seriously. And when I came to Bath, just visited for the first time, I completely fell in love with the place. And I thought, oh, I wish there would be a reason for me to stay here. And that same night, I met my husband. And it was just like, I suppose, moving to Bath, I would say Bath more than England generally, because I really fell in love with the place. And I think that really developed something in my head that I thought, I want to capture that on paint. And I sometimes wonder if I hadn't moved to Bath, maybe I wouldn't have become an artist. I don't know. But I absolutely, loved it. And I think it took me, so yeah, I'm self-taught. So I suppose I just started with kind of nothing, just drawing. I was in secondary school and I was just enjoying doing a few drawing in front of the TV in the evening and all that. And then I just decided to move to pastel just to explore. But really, I had no foundation, no knowledge, and I was just having fun. And I think that's the thing that matters, that whatever I was doing, I was happy with it. I just moved on to looking back now, it was absolutely awful, but it doesn't matter. At the time, I absolutely loved it. And I moved on to trying to oil painting. I suppose when I was 18, I got my kit for my birthday, I remember, from my grandma. And because I didn't know at all what I was doing, I thought let's just go abstract. So I was just doing like, stain and things like that. It looked a little bit like, I suppose, a picture of the space or something. And again, I was just having fun playing with the texture and not asking myself too many questions. And then so I went to uni. I suppose a long time alongside, my studies and uni, I had many times the choice to, if I wanted to learn to go to art school, or, there was option of arts in secondary school. But every time I was thinking, well, you can do art in your free time. Let's be serious, do like Latin or math or, And at uni, I was hesitating between history of art, but I thought, what kind of job can you get with that? Probably nothing. So I thought I'll do communication, which now I'm kind of glad I did, because I suppose it still is quite helpful in my job. So yeah, so went to uni, all that, then came to Bath, like in a gap year, met my husband, and then when I moved here, I started first as a graphic designer. So I've always been into visual and art in general, and I thought I like to do a job when there's some visual aspect in it, but I didn't think obviously that I could be an artist. So I thought I'll do that on the side, be a graphic designer. And I did that for a few years, and I always did my art on the side. I was gradually more inspired by Bath, by everything around, and the more you paint, the more you see things, and suddenly, you just realize that you've painted loads, and I think gradually the art took over. I was starting entering exhibition, I was starting selling work, and I was getting into like the Bath Society of Artists. And I was enjoying more and more. And at some point I thought, okay, this is getting ridiculous now. I spend all my free time, all my weekend doing art, and I enjoy it much more. Let's just take the plunge. And so I stopped the graphic design career and I went full time, which I think was about in 2018. I suppose what helped in a weird kind of way is that just before that, I had two children. And I suppose because of going on maternity leave, I came back, I was part-time. So I can't say that in terms of graphic design, I had a full-on career progression, because I took a step back because of the children. And so I suppose the plunge was a little bit easier, because I thought, well, I'm not losing too much there. Let's just do it. And then it worked out, and I'm absolutely delighted it did. And so that's been since, I suppose, about 2018 or something, that I've been proper full-time artist.
That's wonderful. And what type of work would you be taking on as a graphic designer? Were you working through a company, it sounds like?
Yeah, I've started just when I moved to Bath. I literally didn't even know graphic design. So I bought like InDesign for Dummies and Photoshop for Dummies. And I did some toys packaging, which it was really fun to actually, they gave me a toy and I said, try to redo a whole box and design it. So it was more fun like that. But then after that, I got so that wasn't like a proper job, it was like a student job. But when I got a proper job, then it was for publishing company. I did some greeting cards, I did some publishing for magazines, so I did page layout. But weirdly enough, I don't think I ever did something very, very creative, and I never pushed myself too much, because I thought I want to keep my creativity for my art when I go back home in the evening. And for me, it was just something nice to do, but I thought my passion and my heart is in my art. And at some point I thought I just gotta just do it.
Well, I could be wrong. I wonder whether there's a connection between the graphic design as far as composition and how you may use that knowledge for your painting. Is there any kind of compositional, experience that you've had from your graphic design work that you think carries over, where you know about spacing and relationships, or is it just completely different worlds?
I think just generally all arts, even not especially visual, there's something about, I would call it the flow. How visually, but it could be music, because what I forgot to say is that up until like my 20s, my first passion was piano. And that's why I put all my kind of painting was on the side, and piano and music was everything to me. And then when I discovered painting, more or less when I moved to Bath, then I almost stopped the piano and I just picked up the brush. But what I mean is that I found lots of connection between the music, the graphic design, and the painting, which for me is about having a feel of something that flows right in the painting visually, but in the music as well. It's about how you play, how you paint. And it's finding harmony. It's basically when you look at something or you listen to something, it feels right, and it feels like there's enough tension and there's enough release. And all together, you feel like you're held by something. And I think that's something that I suppose I've always been connected with. And that's why I've always been into art. I mean, I love movies. I love reading. I mean, I don't have time to read at the moment, but I used to love it. But yeah, so I suppose there's a little bit, I think there's a sensitivity to things that can apply across all genre.
And if you started with the fine arts and plein air painting in 2018, how long did it take until you felt like you were finding your feet in that type of artwork?
I think for me, when I started painting from life, which I think is around 2000, yeah, about 18, that's when really I suddenly did massive improvement, which is why I recommend to a lot of people. When I say from life, it was mainly and when I discovered plein air. Because before that, I was painting for photograph, which is nothing wrong with. But I think if you've never painted from life before, you don't realize how much you're missing. And I just was overwhelmed in a good way of how beautiful, how exciting. And I thought, this is exciting. This is fun. I want to do it again. And I got hooked. And so the more I did it, the more I wanted to paint. And I think that's, I suppose, my advice for people generally that want to get into art is if you try to get hooked onto something, or try to get really excited about it, whatever you're doing, if it's for small format or big format or whatever, because once you start getting into it, you will want to do it again, and therefore you will get better. And I think that's what happens with me, is that I got, really hooked, passionate about it. And I got a bit addicted to paint. And I see what they say there's a mileage you have to do before becoming a better painter. And I suppose I kind of took the highway of like, yeah, so people can say I'm quite prolific. And I suppose that's that will to always get the next painting better. That's so, and it's still now. And I always want to get on to the next painting. So yeah, to go back to your question, I think it was painting in plein air and from life that really opened a few things for me. I'd say I can really see a big jump, almost like over a few months or something, in my work. When I think I realize a couple of things. I realize the main thing is when I started see things in an abstract way. Because up until then, I was, thinking of the drawing and thinking of that. And then suddenly something in my brain switched. I wouldn't say overnight, but certainly like over a couple of months, when suddenly I wasn't seeing drawing or item or things, I was just seeing shapes. And I thought, oh, that makes everything much easier, because now I don't have to, I'm not stuck, because I think there's nothing worse than when if you paint a person, you think, oh, I'm painting legs, I'm painting arms, or same like for colors. If you think you're painting a white house in the shade, don't tell your brain you're painting a white house, otherwise you're gonna paint it, white. It's like instead, if you use your eyes and you see shapes in color, you're gonna see it's dark purple or something like that. So I think that really helped me is when I started see things in abstract way, and yeah, and the rest follow, and it makes things easier.
Well, I'd like to just mention, because you mentioned about the purple shadow, your lovely first painting from this year of Bath was beautiful, and I was
Thank you. It's at the back. I think you can see it there. If for those seeing it on my shelf, yeah. So you can see all my painting behind. These are the one kind of drying or assessing or something like that, and that one is probably there.
I love it. I love it. It's wonderful. And is it right that you wait 2 to 4 months for the paintings to dry?
Well, it's more like I think it takes about just a week or two to be touch dry, and after that, you do like a retouch, like what I call an exhibition varnish, or and I could still show it, sell it, or whatever. But I think technically, for really the thick brush stroke to dry, it probably take 4 months or something. Like, if you went with the knife, I mean, not that you want to, but try to go in my thickest brush strokes, I think it would probably take like a few months for the inside of that brushstroke to dry. I mean, especially because here I'm in the studio, it's quite cold, and so in cold weather, it probably will take a while.
And is it all exclusively plein air, or do you allow yourself some studio time with the painting to retouch certain parts, to refine anything, or is it all just in one session? Is it all just alla prima?
It's mainly, I used to do a bit of both and take it back in the studio. And now I've just realized that it's really a chore to do anything in the studio to a plein air piece. I enjoy very much working in the studio from scratch, and it's like a different process, different headspace. But taking a plein air piece, and like for example, that one, I was supposed to assess it and have a look to see, and I've just been postponing it because it's like, oh, I just want to do something new now. So the answer is I try my best now to really finish something in plein air, whether it's in plein air or studio, basically in one session. Because I suppose my issue, and it's a blessing and a curse, is that I think I've got a short attention span. And I enjoy painting probably for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And after that, whatever magical thing is happening to me is gone. And it feels like a chore. And just finishing a painting is always a bit like, oh, I got to, but I can't really, I'm not really feeling it anymore. And so it's even worse when you come back in the studio, and the more days pass, the worse it is. Because literally, sometimes just a few days later, I'm like, I'm not seeing it. What was I seeing in this piece? I'm not seeing it anymore. So really, I've really tried to tap into, like, do the most I can or finish it in that moment. And then so I can move on to the next one after.
You'll give yourself more time for the painting in the studio from a photograph, or will you have a similar attention span with that work?
Similar.
Is it really?
Similar. And that's why I mainly do small formats. And I mean, 99% of my work is done in one session, probably over 2 hours.
Yeah.
Because this is, and that's my challenge this year, is that I would like to do bigger and find a way to still stay excited about my subject for more than 2 hours. But this is really like, it's just I get in the zone, and it's a lovely feeling, and I'm sure you get too, and most painters will understand. But I get in the zone for a short term, and after that, it feels more like work. It feels more like a chore. So it's most of my painting I done quite quickly. But yeah, so it's always it's funny. But the moment I finish a painting, I like literally the last brushstroke, or when I put it on the shelf, I'm then thinking about the next one. And it's a bit of an addiction, but I'm like, so I'm not the one to dwell on the past and dwell on the work. And and that's why I don't do many exhibition or things. I just don't like to, bring them back. And, I just want to paint the next one. That's what I want to do. Because I think that's A, because I want to get that excitement again, and B, because I think that's what's going to help me the most to learn to become a better painter. And so is that kind of feeling, which I think it could be good, but I suppose it's not great if you want to start working larger or having more commitment about, okay, I need to do that area, I need to do this, I need to schedule my time. I like quite big, quite spontaneous, and just do it.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I can completely relate. I have the same thing where I can't continue with a plein air painting once I've finished it and I bring it back home, but I'd like to. I think I'd like to continue with it because I'm never satisfied with what I've done in there. So that's just something I need to work on, is either do a better painting plein air or start painting to
It's
finish
like
it.
as well, I admire people that can take a plein air sketch and then take it back in the studio and make a larger one and enhance it and put more stuff. And for me, that feels a bit like a chore. I feel like depend. I mean, every now and then I get a subject that really excites me, but most of the time, weirdly enough, usually what I do a smaller version for fun. So, for example, I would have, I've done a plein air like a bridge or something like that. And then am I on the spot or back in the studio? I thought, I wonder how I can simplify even more. I wonder how I can really nail it to the essence. So I'm going to try to do that 5 by 5 inch tiny little study just to see if I can capture the essence. And that's the kind of stuff that excites me, not scale it up and add more detail. Because I suppose in my work, I try to be more abstract and always try to say the least possible. And so my aim is not to add more detail, but rather to remove them. And that's probably why I like small formats as well, because that allows me to do that.
Is that a natural inclination, or did you kind of, because surely learning to be a better painter can come from painting with other people who, so yeah, I mean, you can pick up things from other artists. Did you learn about how leaving things abstract from other artists, or is it something you naturally prefer in others' art and your own?
I think that I've learned many things from other artists, but I think that thing is something that's naturally, I suppose it goes with my personality. I'm a more of a like, let's get things done. Let's not mess about. And it's funny because when I go to the strip, I'm not a great starter, so I'm usually take ages setting up. Just getting out of the house is a hassle, and getting my stuff ready and setting up my easel and finding the composition, finding the subject. For me, all of that takes effort and energy. But once I know what I'm doing and I've started the painting, I would quite often be on the strip the last person to be ready to start the painting, but the first one to finish. Because because it's like I start the race really late, but I managed to overtake because I'm just like, okay, done. But it's funny, I often joke that maybe I got a little bit of that habit of kind of rushing in a good way, not like forcing myself to rush since having children, because your free time is so limited, especially in the early years, that I literally had 2 hours or 1 hour and a half. Like the baby's napping, this is your window. You know you're not going to have longer. What can I do in an hour and a half? And I think now is the same. I mean, they're at school, but because I'm quite a slow start, I usually do my admin in the morning or something. So quite often I only start a painting at like 12 or something, or 1, and I have to pick them up at 3. So it's like, well, this is your chance. What can you do? And I think I'm putting those, I suppose, those boundary to my, I'm doing that to myself because I know that maybe I produce my best work when I'm under pressure. And if I had all the time in the world, then I think I would just lose interest. I would get distracted and I would forget what was the point of the painting, was the focus. But I think painting in plein air, you forces me to paint quickly, because obviously the light changes, and so you have to. So I suppose it's by painting in plein air that I got naturally used to paint quickly, and I just put that back in the studio, and so I'm not making a difference to my practice in the studio.
Mm. And how do you go about deciding on a composition for your paintings?
So I think that's, as I said before, I think having a plan and choosing a composition and all that is probably the hardest bit for me. I'm not saying I find it hard, but I'm saying it takes time and consideration. I really want to get it right, because I think once I've got my subject, my idea, and I can picture the painting in my head, then the rest will flow usually quite easily. So I think the painting part is the easier bit. The hardest is to, because I really don't think I can paint anything. You can't just give me a photograph that you find pretty and tell me paint that. I'm not going to make a good painting out of it, because I haven't chosen myself. So I'm really specific, and I think that's something that I really developed with the years, is to be very specific and very demanding with myself with what I paint. And but it can be any subject, so I'm not talking about subject, I'm talking about how I'm going to paint it, how is the light coming from. So take, for example, flowers, still life. If you bring flowers back in the studio, I will mess about for like half an hour with the spotlight, with, oh no, that vase, oh no, oh, that background, oh no, oh, that frame, that format. And once I've got it, and I was like, oh yes, I can see the painting now, and I see it in my head, then the painting can take, even shorter or something. So that's the process is really in the head. So I think it's about tuning into what inspires you and what you think can work, and knowing yourself a little bit and knowing what you're looking for. And I think the more I paint, the more I'm in touch with that, and that really helps with finding subjects. So yeah, what was that? Was that the question? I can't remember what you asked.
Yeah, you are talking about what your preference is. I suppose, to give anyone who's listening who's not familiar with how you go about this, I normally look for diagonals, opposite, like kind of diagonals that
Yeah.
almost make triangles, kind of coming through the composition. Is
Mm-hmm.
that something that you do anything like that consciously, or do you just go by intuition? Because sometimes I try to consciously place things in thirds so that I can trust that it will sit on the picture plane well.
Yeah, that was the original question. Is that how I do my composition? So yeah, so I'm definitely looking for specific things. That I think by time now I realize what it is. Before you don't know, and you just happy accident. And now I realize a bit more what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for, I suppose I always like to say that in a painting is like the yin and the yang. And when I say tension and release, and that can go for lines and blocks of, masses, but it can go as well, it goes for the colors as well. So I love a painting, a composition, a subject that's got enough warmth and cool. So I like light because you go dark, but I like vertical because you go horizontal. But as you said, I don't want just, I'm not really keen on just something vertical, something horizontal, or even both. I like kind of a bit awkward kind of shape. So you feel like the light will flow. I sometimes like to think of the light flowing down the painting like it would flow, like water flow through a river. And how do you catch that light? How do you catch those angles and those colors? And how does it feel like contained together? And so usually what it starts is that I find something that moves me. I walk around and I see the light fall. It's usually about the light. And I see the light falling onto something, or I see some interesting shapes or some interesting contrast. And I thought, okay, that's what I want to paint. But then I have to wonder how I'm going to do this. So first, how I'm going to frame it. So I just go around like this. Sometimes I take pictures. Sometimes I even crop picture on my phone and I have quite a few and look them from afar. And so just trying out composition. And then once I feel like I've got, so then obviously there's the choice of the format of the painting. Do I feel I'm confident to do something quite big? Does it go enough to it to fill a big canvas? Or am I talking about just a tiny little study? So once I've made the decision, then I can get started. But what I said before is that I often have the vision of the finished painting in my head before I even start. And so that really helps me because I feel it's a bit like going to the car and put the sat nav and you just know where you're going. And I'm often joke saying that sometimes I change my mind like halfway through the painting and I might just change my destination. But I always know at all time where I'm going, which is very, I suppose not all painter works that way. And I admire some painter, and I'm a bit envious sometimes to feel a bit more free of like, I'm gonna start and see where it goes and you know where he's gonna take me. And I'm not like that. I'm like, I've got a vision, I've got an idea. Now I want to get it done, and I want my painting to match my mental picture. So this is I'm on a mission in an hour and a half or 2 hours to get that happen. And I suppose at least it makes things quite efficient, and it helps me because in my head, I can already tell what's going to be the focal point, what's going to be the light area, what's going to be the dark area, what's going to be thin, what's going to be thick. So I make kind of all this decision already in my head. I'm not saying it's rigid, but it's more about having a feeling how you want the painting to look like, to feel like, and you're just trying to convey that. So I suppose it's a bit like, you know, sometimes someone writing a movie or a book, you know, it's not just I'm writing a movie about a love story or something. It's about, yeah, but I want to talk about this more than that. I want to put the emphasis on that bit. I want that, leave that thing out. And I want the viewer to feel that way when they look at it or when they listen to it. So this is all that kind of thinking. But it can take only a few minutes. But I feel, yeah, I'm already set before I start. And if I don't get that feeling, strong feeling before I start the painting, I just keep looking around. I find it really hard to paint when I'm not inspired and when I don't have a vision. And usually there's no good accident. It just ends up with being a wiper. So yeah.
Really, there's no way out of that moment where you're not feeling as engaged with the subject. Is it just, have you never found a trick to kind of push through the lack of inspiration or engagement with your interest?
When really I'm not feeling engaged anymore, I just wipe the painting because I thought time is too precious and I don't want to battle it as well. I really don't want to do a bad painting when I'm going to feel bad about it, take it back in the studio. It's going to take my energy away. I'm going to look at it in my shelf. I'm going to feel bad about it. I'm going to think, how can I fix it? And I'm not enjoying fixing stuff back in the studio. So unless it's a commission I really have to find a way, then otherwise I don't waste my time. I just wipe it and do something else or come back another day. But I just want only happy thoughts. And so yeah, so of course it's not always rosy. And of course, a lot of the time I'm painting and I'm not thinking it's going super well, or I'm not thinking I'm painting very well. And so I suppose that in that time, I'm just trying to say, well, just follow the route, as you said, try to enjoy the process and just focus on one thing, like focus on making lovely brushstroke or focus on getting that light right, or just trying to kind of remove those bad thoughts in my head and focus on the thing that's supposed to go excite me at the start. Like what got me excited is that light. Just try to focus on that and the rest will follow. But if I ever mess up a painting, usually it's because I'm not confident about the idea to start with and I might overdo it or something. Then I suppose a way to kind of save it back as I end up kind of wiping a few of the blocks in the area to kind of take it back a step. Because I think you can't, if something is not right at a step, there's no amount of detail and other brushstroke that can save it, you know. You kind of have to take it back and then fresh board, not fresh board, but dig back a step, wipe a few things that you think are not serving, you're doing justice, and then and see what happened next, really.
Well, you mentioned lovely brushstrokes, and I'd like, if we can, to talk about what that means for anyone who, again, is not familiar with how to make lovely brushstrokes. How would you explain that to somebody who may be just starting out?
I think the first thing that people, I suppose, beginners or amateur might struggle with is when you put a brushstroke, you just leave it. And I know it feels great to keep, brushing about, and I know because it's so tempting, and you see that lovely paint on your brush and you think, well, I'm going to put another one at the same place because it felt so good to put the first one, let's just do it again. But by doing it again, you just lost what was making exciting on the canvas. So obviously, but to do that, you have to be quite confident about where to put it, and so to make those decisions. So I understand you can't get it right the first time all the time. But if something looks good on your board, then leave it and move to another place. So I like to think of building my painting like I'm building a mosaic, like a church window or something. And so I'm thinking of, like, I see blocks, I see colors. How can I'm going to fill them with the right color or thing, but I'm not worried about how do you call it, transition between those blocks, about edges. I'm going to try to fill it. Doesn't matter if this gap, doesn't matter, not smooth out anything until you decided actually something needs to be smoothed out, but not go on to, like, so just try to be kind of rough to start with, fill the canvas with big brush stroke. Don't be afraid to use a lot of paint, but not all the time. So I suppose, and that's why I talk about the vision, is that I often, when I start, like most painters, I start quite thin. I start usually with the dark, and I go from like dark to light, and I go up, almost like you go up the keys on the piano. And I start quite thin with diluted paint, and then when I get to the focal point, which is usually the lightest part of the painting, then I make sure I use lots of paint, and I put very juicy brush stroke, and I don't touch them. And I, even better if you see literally the mark of the brush. And so I suppose it's sometimes my point is having a vision and having a plan, and picturing what you want to achieve with your painting. I think for me, it helps me a lot because it allows me to know that I need to leave that bit out, because that bit out doesn't matter as much, but I need to put that one thicker. I just thought if I got an example to show you.
I was going to ask you that next, if you have any lovely paintings to show.
That's what I did a few weeks ago in Bath. So that's like typical Bath for you. Yeah. So that's Putney. It was like the autumn color, which is absolutely gorgeous. And so I walked there, and just the block of that tree, the red of the path. And so when you say, am I inspired by Putney Bridge? Yes and no. It's not the subject of my painting. The subject of my painting is those blocks of colors that happen to all align in such a beautiful way that stopped me on my track, and I painted that. But I knew that obviously the focal point, I want the eye to kind of go over that foreground that is quite dark, and to lead to what would probably be the focal point, which is the bridge. But one of my point is that in my composition, I thought I need a foreground that's a bit darker, but I'm going to make that quite thinner, because I don't want that to be heavy and drag you down. I want the eye to jump over and then go there. And so again, what you said about triangle and line, so that line is help going there, that line as well, that stops the eye from going too far on the canvas. So all that kind of works together in a way that the eye is kind of making the eye to go where you want it to go. And you do that by color temperature, you do that with lines, with blocks, with, the treatment of the paint. But this is not something, not every brush stroke I'm thinking, oh, I'm doing that. It's more, I suppose it comes naturally once you've painted a lot and you know where you're going. But yeah, it's those tools kind of help me. I try to think when I teach, I explain that with every brush stroke, you kind of got the choice between two things. If you think that you've got dark versus light, you've got thin versus thick, you've got detail versus kind of blurry, you've got saturated versus desaturated. and you've got hard edge versus soft edge. Well, if you want the eye to be really attracted to something like your focal point, then your best bet is to make it thick, light, hard edge, more detail, and more saturated. And even better if you make other stuff around the opposite, like blurry, thin, dark, muddy, all that, less detail, less edges, then you can't help it. The eye will jump over those muddy area and go into the focal point. So I tried, when you go back to the composition, I try to, when I do a painting, to have that in mind and choose subject that I've got enough rest for the eye, enough places when it's not that interested, it's a bit blurry, it's a bit muted, but it is so important because it allows the eye to kind of jump over that and go to the right place. And I think it's important to set the scene, because I always say, if you had a song or a movie that was only the good stuff, then you want to be kind of held a little bit before you get there. And I think it's important with the painting as well, because if I cropped that painting just to the bridge, then it's just a bit too much of a good thing, I think. So it's good to frame it with other stuff.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I love that. And when you do have this clear roadmap, like a sat nav, as you said, of where your destination will be, where is it you find, or do you find these points for, discovery and spontaneity and invention? Does that happen in your process still?
Yes, but I suppose the what happened is it might not be during the painting, but it might be more the destination I set myself that I'm trying to push further and further. So I try, because I need to keep it exciting, and I think that's my biggest challenge, and that for me the most important thing in my painting career is I want to keep things fun, exciting, but keep learning. And I take it very seriously, but I take very seriously something that needs to stay fun. And so, and I think I get more fun when I'm a little bit out of my depth, but not too much. So it's trying to find those things when I say, okay, well, today I'm going to challenge myself to do another type of composition or another type of subject or paint in difficult condition. And when you add those little elements, you will have to react when you paint because you haven't done that before. And then I just surprise myself. Oh, I've managed to solve that with doing that. So this is the kind of, I suppose, but I don't do a lot of, I would love to know what it feels like to paint something not knowing at all what you're going to do and see where it takes you. And I admire painter that I've got such a creative mind that they can like change a painting, add stuff and all that. I very much paint what's in front of me, but obviously I do paint it filtered through my eyes and my emotions. So clearly, I tend to oversaturate things. I'm very aware of that. But this is how I feel. This is how I respond to the landscape. But yeah, so to respond to your question, it's more about the challenge I set myself. I love painting. It's weird, but I love to make it a tiny little bit hard. So, as I said, I'm a bit out of my depth, and I love. So that's why I suppose recently, in the recent year, I've painted a lot of live events because, like, I've been painting at Glastonbury Festival, I've been painting at the circus or a fair. I suppose it's all about the light there as well. Different light, not natural light, but more like artificial light and concert light and circus light, which is really magical. And so yeah, that's the kind of stuff that was really challenged because I was painting live. The circus I was painting during the show, and people were moving all the time, and the act only lasted 10 minutes. So I did lots of paintings, and I came back for 3 shows to finish them all. They were all laid out in front of me, and I just kept taking back the first one and then the second one. And that was a massive challenge, and I think I learned loads doing that. I suppose in those moments when I'm really pushed to by the element, by the time, by the thing, then I suppose I tap into something less of a plan and more of let's just do it. And that feels great, but you can't live like that every day. But most of the time I do have a plan. I suppose I've got more plan when I work from photo because that's my plan is set almost in stone. I really see what I'm going to do. In plein air, you always got elements that throw you off, the light change. And sometimes, you know, I do something and I realize, oh, actually, that would work better if I do that way. And so, as I said, I can change my destination. So I'm still open to change and to inspiration that can come. But generally, I like to know where I'm going.
Mm. Well, I can imagine that having a plan is aided by knowing your materials. And I've seen on your website that you have a list of colors, Winsor and Newton colors. And is this your set palette? Do you still abide by these same colors?
Yes. So yeah, at first, I don't know if you know, I'm using water soluble oil. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. No.
Here you go. So I started just a note about that because people are usually interested about that bit. So I started using them when I was pregnant with my first child about 11 years ago because they were less toxic because I didn't need to use tub. You just use water and it was easier to clean just with water and soap. And there was no smell, you know, and even the varnish and things like that were less toxic. So I thought, let's just give it a try. And it took me about 3 or 4 sessions to get used to it. At the start, it felt a bit weird, but then I got used to it, and then I never looked back. I really recommend them because they're just much, I think, healthier to live with. Because now, whenever I go and paint with friends and they use the real stuff and they've got tub, I'm like, whoa, like my head, it gives me a headache. So yeah, but I'm very pleased with that. All I can say is that I think people say they're a little bit stickier, less flowy, stickier. Like someone said it one day, it feels like painting with fudge. And so I think it's not for everybody. It's not for all type of painters, but for someone like me painting most of the time a la prima and is happy to use chunky bits of paint, then that works great. So yeah, so going back to the palettes, I think you know, I told you I started like from nothing, self-taught, so I really didn't know what I was doing. I literally bought like all the paints color I could get in the shop, and my paint palette was a mess. I wasn't sure what I was doing, and then I got a few DVDs, you know, instruction DVDs, and I remember one because I was really one of my first inspiration was Edward Seago. And I got a DVD from, I think, a painter called Miles Fairhurst, if I'm right. He said paint like Seago, and I thought, that sounds cool. And on his video, he explained how he laid out his palette and what color he used. So I thought, great, I'm just going to do the same. And so I laid out those colors, and that was like, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, and I never changed them since then. So thank you, Miles, wherever you are, because it was just a very, I mean, I suppose it's very similar to most painters I know, which is basically I've got some reds, some blues, and some yellows, and in most of them I've got a warm and a cool version. Doesn't really matter which one it is. Some people prefer this or that, but the idea is that I can, and then obviously I got also some earthy colors like, you know, yellow ochre or rose sienna that allow me to get things, you know, more warm or get stuff, do some lovely grays or things like that. But the idea is that I like to be able to mix all my own colors with those first colors. So I don't really buy purple or green, or I've got one green that I only use when I need an artificial green, like the flag at Glastonbury or a bin at in the allotment, you know, those green bin. So whenever I want to kind of, I wanted to scream, I'm artificial, I'm not a natural green, that's what I use. But otherwise, I don't. So yeah, I don't buy orange and all that because I think I can mix them myself and it will give an harmony to the painting because it means that the same blue has been used for that purple that has been used for that green, and so on the painting the painting will the color will kind of talk together, and there will be some harmony, I feel, rather than. So I think that's one of my tips for people starting painting is to use less color and just go back to basic. And once you feel confident with your colors, if you want, add another one and see how it goes rather than buy loads and see how it goes. Because I think too many colors sometimes it's a little bit, it feels a bit wrong. It feels like in nature, I think when you look, there's always like a veil of atmosphere that kind of links everything together. And so you wouldn't have that many different colors saturated to the level that you get when you buy a fresh tube all together in the same scene. And so unless you go for more like abstract or something, which is absolutely fine, but So yeah, so I got that palette, and because I use that a lot, I felt confident with it, and now I'm very I would be completely thrown off if you give me another color and it said use that now. I was like, whoa, I'm not, because I feel it's very important to for me to get in that zone and feel confident with where I'm going is to feel confident with my material, with my brush, with my colors, and with my support. And once I know I've got everything that I need and I can trust, then I feel like I'm supported to do what I need to do. But every time, if something is not quite right, if I haven't got the right support and I borrow someone else's or something, then it can go anyway. Sometimes it happens for the best and you get a lovely surprise. But yeah, so I think it's quite important to feel comfortable. But um, people sometimes ask, do I do other medium than oil, and do I enjoy doing that? And not at all, because I'm so obsessed with oils, and this is so my kind of comfort, happy place that I just don't want to spread myself, which is not especially good because I think a good artist probably should try a little bit of everything. And I do admire, some of my friends that do pastel, that do watercolor and all that. I don't even do much drawing. I draw with the brush because it's weird. I kind of see the world in shapes, and I don't really feel the need. It doesn't feel right for me to just use lines to. I would use shading and all that, but the problem as well is that there's no colors in that. And for me, the whole excitement in the scene is the color and the shapes. And so, oils is definitely the way to go for me and you've got that kind of texture. But yeah, it was a long answer for your palette question, but
No, it's a lovely answer. And but it makes me wonder whether you have a sketchbook, because it sounds as though you're not as interested in sketching as you are in getting these 3mm panels that you get from your frame maker, from what I read. Is that correct?
No, that's right. Well, that's the thing, is that I don't have a sketchbook because for me, my sketches, I just do tiny little oil sketch, but with oil, not with drawing. So, for example, I love those. These are like a 5x7, and I do loads of them. This is my happy place, because I just feel like this is the example I gave you with the bridge. I did a bigger version, and as soon as I finished the bigger version, I was still in plein air. I thought, how can I make it more simple and simplify? And I did that, and that's what I absolutely love doing, is tiny, small oil sketch with a few brush stroke. But it's weird because if you ask me to draw that with a pencil, it probably wouldn't have been that exciting, and I just don't know if I would be able to convey the same thing. So I'm sure I could learn, but I want to keep it fun. For me, any time away from the paint is like it's torture. So I was like, no, I don't take me away from it.
Is there a similarity with the paint brushes? Do you have brushes that you just trust and know well, or do they vary in which company you'll buy brushes from?
Yeah, definitely. I use like most painters I know, professional painter I know, the Rosemary and Co brushes. And again, since I've discovered them, there was no looking back, and they do exactly what I want them to do. They're very forgiving because I can tell you I don't take good care of my brush. Like right now, I can show you
Please.
I that's the so I've got my easel there. I'll show you in a minute if you want. And I've got that bag where I put my brush and my paints. So that was from doing, I think, that painting like a week ago or something, and I haven't cleaned them yet. So I put them in a sock to travel. And they're like, that's all the paint. So that I use a lot of brush. And so people always laugh when they see me because I just go there. So I put them in my sock, remove it from the sock, put it in my hands, and then I just use one brush at a time for a color. So I start usually with the dark. Like, for example, that painting, I would have done the purple. And I go everywhere with the purple. And then I just put it on my finger there. And I thought, okay, well, I need another color now. I'm going to take another brush. And then I do another one. And then by the end of the series, here you see there's about a third that's not used. So I didn't use all of them. But I've got about, like, I don't know, 25 or something. And why do I do that? I know so many painters that's much more clean than me, and they just do one brush and then they wipe it and then they just do. It's just I'm always such in a rush when I paint, and I want to stay in the zone. I don't want anything thing stopping me, any distraction. And so I feel like if I do that, it means I'm saving time because I can just get on with the next bit. But also I can go back, because quite often I go back to that color when I want to add something. And I just try to find which brush. I say, oh yeah, that was that one. And so I just do that. And then at the end of the thing, I just put them back in my stock. And then I go home and then I clean them when I get around to. But they, as I said, they're very forgiving because, I just have, because they're water soluble oil, they're actually quite easy to clean. And so all I do is that I soak them a little bit in soapy water. First, I try to remove the excess. But after that, soapy water. And if like a good shampoo or something, it just works and it comes off. So this is brilliant.
Oh, that's
So they're filberts, so like rounded. And I use short handle, which again is not very common. I know most painters I know use long handle because I work quite close to the canvas. And I just a bit like, people wonder how, because it's quite abstract, how do I do it when I'm just so close and I don't often step back. And I don't know, I like doing that. A lot of painters I know, which is probably the more proper way. They've got long handle and they put a mark and step back and then put another mark. But I'm like, so that's how I do it.
Well, for anyone listening, from I'd say 25 brushes, there were only about 15, I'd say, which looked like bristles. The rest of them look like, I don't know, the tips of lipstick or something, like they had something really dark, kind of juicy paint still gummed up in there. So that's what we were
I know
looking
it's they're very old but they still work fine. But I'm not precious with, I like to, yeah, like, with some painters keep their palettes and the mixing area clean after every session. And I'm not like that. I like to be free to make a mess, just like a child. And so, so I can let my creativity loose.
Well, much like the soapy water that you use, I've done with brushes that are absolutely solid. I've got just a spot of washing up liquid in the palm of my hand and just do little circles with a completely solid brush, and it just works its way up the bristles and it just loosens up. And I've
There
brought,
you go.
after years, I've brought brushes back to life that I haven't cleaned for years. So
Never give up on a brush.
no, it's bad to do. You should always try to clean them, but I'm terrible as well at cleaning brushes, so I can appreciate that.
Exactly.
But yeah, I'd like to ask next about what has your experience been like with galleries? Have you had a good experience, or has it been mixed, or have you not exhibited much? What's it been like?
I don't have much experience with galleries because I've always been a little bit protective of, I know, maybe, I don't know, of my freedom of, I just love doing what I want when I want and not having not too much constraint about you need to deliver that much work or so I don't know. I just love there's a few reasons I suppose I don't work with gallery. A is I love my freedom. And I'm not saying they don't allow you freedom, but it puts a little bit of a, timeline of like, you need to deliver that much work, you need to get in frame. It takes energy and time to kind of make it happen. Secondly, I suppose is most of my formats are quite small. So my painting are quite small, therefore they're not that expensive. And therefore it wouldn't make a lot of sense to sell them through a gallery when they take 50%. And then it wouldn't make that much sense. But I'm hoping in the future, if I manage to paint big, that's my plan for the year, then I would love to find a gallery to obviously display them and, help me sell them. But at the moment, because I'm more working like through little oil sketch and studies, these I can manage to sell them myself through like my website, online, through Instagram, and I can ship them easily worldwide. And so that's something that kind of works for me at the moment. But I'm not at all against working with a gallery in the future. But right now, my kind of work is not really, I suppose, relevant for a gallery. And finally, I suppose the last thing is that I quite enjoy. Enjoy when it's not doesn't take too long, but I enjoy that side as well of being in touch with the collectors and the people on Instagram and knowing where my painting goes and getting feedback and getting people coming back for another one. And so I think if I pass that on to gallery, then obviously they would do that side, which obviously would free me up to paint more, but it means I would lose all connection with the buyers and the people. And I don't mind I quite enjoy doing all the rest, the website, the newsletter, the social media, and it's nice to do a little bit of everything. And if I didn't do any of that or didn't enjoy doing any of that, then for sure I would need a gallery because I wouldn't be able to sell. But for the moment, as long as I can carry on doing it myself and it kind of works, then I don't feel an urgent need. But I think they've definitely got a place in the life of an artist, and I'm sure at some stage in my career I will want one and I will need one. But right now, I don't feel the urgent need for it.
That's fair enough. I suppose my case for it would be that you have probably around 50 of your paintings behind you because they're so small. There's probably around 50 there on the shelves.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful patchwork of color, and to see those together in person would be such a treat. So that's the case that I'd like to make for galleries, is that gives people the opportunity to actually see them in person together, relating to each other, which is just wonderful, you know, and you can see from behind you how well they do speak to each other on the wall as well.
That is true, and that is true that not that they're beautiful. I mean, it's true that it'd be nice to see them together, and I think that's the one thing I miss is that it would be nice that sometimes, and I really need to. I've never done a solo show just because I just don't have the headspace and the energy to think, oh, I need to do that. I'm just like, if I can get away with selling my work like that and keep painting, because I just want to paint. And I think if I organize a show, I'm not going to paint at all because I'm going to spend my year organizing the show. So this is just the only thing that's stopping me. But whether it's a gallery or a show I organize myself, it's true that at some point it will be lovely to actually do a show, to show my work together and people see them physically like that. Because it's true that most of the time people buy them online and they never see, you know, they only see on the screen. Obviously they get it afterwards, but not many people see my work as a body of work together. But I think for that, I probably would want to paint a little bit larger to have a bit of variety. So this is definitely something that's in my head for the next year or so, that at some point I need to paint larger. I need to have a bigger body of work and hold on to it and do an exhibition. But I'm always pushing it for tomorrow.
Or even just an open studio. I think I'm just hoping that one day I can see all this beautiful work behind you in person.
Well, you're welcome anytime here. I don't know how far you are, but people do sometimes come in the studio. So that I always kind of collect. But it's true that it's not that easy if you're not local.
Yeah, I'm not that local. No, I'm in North Wales, so it's a good drive.
I suppose another problem with galleries or having shows is all the framing. It's a lot of cost, and what if you don't sell them all? You know, I don't have a massive studio here and not much space, and so what do you do with all those frames? So for me, it's just easier. I'm not saying it's the best for my career or something, but I think it's easier for me not to work with the gallery and not to do show at the moment.
Yeah.
But one day I'm just gonna have to face it because, you know, it would be nice. And it'd be nice to meet as well. Also, I do. Obviously, we've done something with the British Plein painters when we did a few exhibition, and I do meet collectors as well at the ROI. So that's kind of my chance. But it's true that I could do a bit more than that.
So where can people see it in person? Sorry, where are there any places that you do publicly exhibit? Did you just say you do a couple of things?
Well, that's the only two really. The Bath Society of Artists. So I'm a member of the Bath Society of Artists in the ROI. These two, every year I will put paintings. So for example, now I've got two paintings at the Victoria Gallery in Bath. I think it's on only now until a few more days. I think the rest of the week. They've got the annual show that finishes this Saturday. So now I've got two there. And so every year.
We're recording this early January. This may not be published until.
Oh, of course, yes. Would I say
June? I'm not sure. I don't know when we're publishing.
No. It won't be because literally it's this Saturday. So which will be like I think the 11th of January. So at the Bath Society of Artists, I always got two, and the ROI, I got a few at the annual exhibition every year. So this is probably the best place to see the painting and see me because I always come like at the private view. But you know, in the future, otherwise people are welcome to come and visit my studio in Bath. So that's if you come to Bath or nearby, just drop me a line and you can see the work and rummage through all the box and the shelf and everything.
That would be a treat. I think if I'm ever down that way, I certainly will reach out because it'd be nice to see that. So where would you like anyone who's watching, where would you like them to see and support your work online? Is there any social media or anything like that you'd like people to visit to see and support you with your work?
Well, I'm mainly active through Instagram. I must say I'm not really much on Facebook. So Instagram and my website are the two places to go. So on my website, on Instagram, I really post everything I do. And so you see the development of some paintings and videos and all that. But on my website, I just list everything is available. So that's how I sell my work, is to my website. So usually people go from Instagram to my website, or they subscribe to my newsletter and they receive an email when I launch a new series. But it's usually like unframed work directly from my website that I can ship worldwide. So that's generally that.
Excellent. Well, there will be images on the screen and links in the description beneath the video and beneath the audio platforms. And we do encourage people listening and watching to go and look at Valerie's work and support her, because it's absolutely beautiful work. It's been so nice talking to you. Thank you for being a guest.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. That was lovely.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode. If you can support the podcast by leaving a like or a comment down below, that would really be great. But what we'd really like is if you're able to leave a review on the podcast channels, wherever you listen to it or download it, because that helps us get spread around the internet so that more people have access to us and able to see what we're making.
Also, follow us on Instagram, and we'd really appreciate it if you like and engage with our posts. Help get the podcast better known. Thanks for listening.